Evening. Welcome to the August 9th Troy City Council meeting. This evening we are pleased to have with us Joe Macedo of the Kensington Community Church to provide us with an invocation, and that will be followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. Joe.
It's my pleasure to be here.
Oh, you want to go on the other side? There you go. And I'll catch you on the screen here.
Oh, gee.
Thank you.
It's great to be here, and I'm just glad to be a resident of Troy and raise my kids here, and I love the city. Appreciate all that you guys do. Thank you so much. And let's pray. Father, we come to you in your name, and we thank you for this great city. We thank you for great leadership. We ask for wisdom for this group and all of us in this city, Lord, to pull together during these tough times. We just ask that your blessing would be upon every council person in this chamber, and that you would bless us as a city, and that you would give us wisdom how to navigate through these times. We ask all these things in Christ's name. Amen. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Appreciate you coming this evening. May we have the roll call, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Mayor Schilling?
Here.
Councilmember Beltramini?
Here.
Fleming?
Here.
Howard?
Here.
Kerwin?
Here.
McGinnis?
Here.
Slater?
Here.
Quorum present. This evening, there are no certificates of recognition or special presentations scheduled, carryover items or public hearings, so we'll go right to public comment. And I'm reminding folks that public comment is on agenda items that are on there or on items that are not on the agenda. And the information about public comment is provided in your booklet. And I'll begin by calling on those that signed up to speak on certain items. And the first person to speak is William Wylanis, if I pronounced it correctly.
That's correct.
Thank you. Good evening.
I represent just under 2 million square feet of commercial office space in the city of Troy. We currently have a end user who's looking at about 250,000 square feet of that space. We've kind of come to terms with them, but one of the things that I'd like you to do is to direct the city manager to amend the policy to allow real property tax abatement. It's between the city of Troy and another local city who's going to win this deal with these people. They're going to bring about 1,400 people to the city of Troy. That's a large amount of people coming to the city, 250,000 square feet. So I ask you to direct the city manager to that amendment for the tax abatement. And I'd like to see this deal get done, so you start that ball rolling with the city, and other good things are to come after that. So I'd appreciate it if you would do that. Thank you.
And you realize that that is one of our study items tonight that we're going to discuss?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Our next person who would like to speak is John Reagan.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is John Reagan, and I'd like to speak on Report N5. Okay. My name is John Reagan. I've been a resident of Troy for over 20 years. I'm here tonight representing the Troy Nature Society, a nonprofit corporation, and I am the president of the board of directors. The Troy Nature Society was started on May 6, 2010 by a group of citizens that felt that the Lloyd A. Stage Nature Center should not be closed in July 1, 2011. The Troy Nature Society intent is to provide financial support to keep the Lloyd A. Stage Nature Center open for further education of the citizens of Troy and the surrounding communities. The other officers of the board of directors are Crystal Lewandowski, Vice President, Mary Krieger, Secretary, Charles Jensen, Treasurer. The board has been meeting every 2 weeks since May 6th to begin meeting the requirements for the 501c3 application. This includes a mission statement, filing with the State of Michigan Articles of Incorporation for a nonprofit corporation, and approval of the bylaws for the corporation. Our mission statement is create knowledge of the natural world and green space within the city of Troy and surrounding region, leading to an increased understanding and stewardship of our natural environment. Today, the Troy Nature Society has begun membership drive to enlist members that believe in our mission. These members will become the backbone of the society and supporting the continued function of the Lloyd A. Stage Nature Center. On August 25th, we will have a membership meeting to ratify the bylaws that were written and approved by the Board of Directors, elect new Board of Directors as defined by the bylaws. Following the membership meeting, there will be a general meeting where we will discuss the specifics of what the new Board of Directors will need to accomplish. The most significant effort will be the writing of the agreement between the City of Troy and the Troy Nature Society in assuming the facility operation of the Lloyd A. Stage Nature Center. Ratification of the bylaws by the membership will complete the final requirement for the 501c3 application. We will mail that application to the IRS on August 26th. We will request expediting the review process in order to fully support the Troy Nature Society assuming facility operation and program control of the Lloyd A. Stage Nature Center on 1 July 2011. Carol Anderson has written a letter in support of expediting this application. Thank you, Carol, for your support. This endeavor has allowed us to meet people that have volunteered to support us in preparing the 501c3 application. I would like to thank several of them. Ron Eggleston, who is the president of the Friends of the Fenner Nature Center, Lansing, Michigan, who has provided a lot of encouragement and copies of their documents on their agreement with the City of Lansing. I'm using those documents as a model for what we're trying to do. I'd like to thank the Troy Historical Society. They have agreed to be our fiduciary so that we can now accept money through them that would be tax deductible. I'd also like to thank Ward Randall and John Lavender, who have been mentors in our development of the 501c3 application. I'd like to thank John Lamorato and Carol Anderson for the time that they've spent discussing the details of what needs to take place and needs to be in the agreement with the city. I'm requesting your support in preserving the Lloyd A. Stage Nature Center. It's a valuable piece of property in the city of Troy. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Reagan. Next person that wishes to speak is James Savage.
Good evening, Mayor,
Good evening.
members of council. I was kind of encouraged to see in last week's election results that most voters in Oakland County do support a public transit system. But does anyone know what we are getting for our money? Will the people of Troy be able to get around the area without a car? I don't think so. I don't think it'll make any difference to them. What I see is the same waste of tax dollars that I've seen for many, many years. And I'm wondering, when is someone going to stand up and say enough and stop the waste? We've all seen it in the transit system. We've seen it in the Detroit bus system. We've seen it in Sumter's system. And this brings me to the Troy-Birmingham Transit Center. And to me, I see it as just an excuse to spend taxpayer money. I doubt that it will ever be built, and if it is, it will become a disused money pit that the Troy taxpayers will be stuck with. Last week, the Transport Department announced it was ready to move ahead with a Woodward Avenue system. And that, I believe, does make some sense, although I doubt it will ever pay its way without taxpayer funding. Right now, I see 45-seater buses currently cruising Woodward with only 5 or 6 passengers on them. and this is right downtown. You can go to the transit center in Detroit on Michigan Ave, and you see the bus leave, and it says Woodward Ave, maybe 3 people on it. So we're looking at the total waste, and as I've said before, the minibuses would be much better. So let's take a look at the cost of this wasteful venture. And I'm going to have some doubt on my numbers here, but as I recall, the initial engineering study, I think, was over $1 million. And now I'm reading that in 2006, there was $500,000, 2007, $1.5 million, 2008, another $1.5 million, 2009, $1.5 million, and I presume 2010, another $1.5 million, and we're looking now at, $7.5 million just that the city has set aside for this project. And that's only the little bit. And then we have the consultant fees, tens of thousands of dollars. Lobbyist fees, tens of thousands of dollars. So I'm wondering, how is it that the city can find money for this pie-in-the-sky dream, but cannot find money for a library or a community center? And now it appears that Grand Sacra wants its property back. And the Troy taxpayer will have to pay the legal costs to defend a lawsuit for something that we don't want, we don't need, and we can't afford. And from what I read, there's a good chance that Grand Sacra will win the lawsuit, because I believe they probably know something that we don't. So I would say, let's get the total amount, dollar amount of this project, what it's cost the city up to now, and then take the loss and walk away. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that wishes to speak under public comment? Audrey Zimbruski?
While he was talking about SEMTA, I just want to know there's a lot of seniors out there that don't know they can get a taxi cab. They don't know the number of it or anything else, and I've told a few of them that, they lost their spouses and they need a ride to the store, to the doctor's and that, and sometimes you can't get somebody else to give them a ride. And they just wonder, can they put it in the Gazette on the front page to say if you need it, because they can pick up a Gazette when they go to the grocery store. Put down the telephone number to taxis being needed by any senior that needs a ride somewhere, and the SEMTA bus that can pick them up, or Smart Bus, whatever it be. It's just something that I know I've had a few people, and I can't drive them anymore, and I've had enough of my problems driving them. And so I'm just wondering if, I've told them there's taxi cabs that can come into Troy, but I do not know the numbers to them. So maybe if we could just put on a page, the front page of the Gazette, it might help out. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else? That concludes those that had public comment on agenda items or items that are not on the agenda. And so we'll go to response or reply to public comment. Is there any council member that wishes to have staff reply on something or answer a question? Councilwoman Kerwin?
Well, I know, thank you, Mayor, and it's for the manager. There's a mention specifically of bringing 1,400 people. I don't know whether later on you're going to speak about.
Are you talking about the tax abatement issue? Mm-hmm.
No, I'm not going to talk about a specific project per se, but do need direction on our policy for tax abatement, which currently addresses personal property only, unless there's a leasehold improvement involved.
Okay.
But the gentleman's correct. We're in competition with another municipality that offers tax abatement on real property. It was a decision. I just didn't want to say, well, we don't offer it, I'll catch you later. I thought I'd give the city council a chance to see if they wish to modify their policy. I have a recommendation as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you. I think that we're going to have the full discussion on that later. You didn't want to.
This is fine. It's
yeah.
a really public policy issue. It's just a specific mention of something that's under
I think
under
that
time frame.
Right. He mentions it as an example so that when we're looking at the policy, we'll have one example to look at that is occurring. I'm sure there are other examples too that are going to be brought forward. Okay, any other? Okay, thank you. Then we'll go to there are no postponed items. We're on to regular business items. And the first item under regular business is City Council appointments confirmation, and that is of Teresa Brooks, the Oakland County Health Department rep, by ordinance to the Building Code Board of Appeals. Mayor Pro Tem Fleming?
I will move that resolution as printed.
Second.
Moved by Mayor Pro Tem Fleming, seconded by Councilwoman Beltramini, that we confirm the appointment of Teresa Brooks, the Oakland County Health Department representative, to the Building Code Board of Appeals. Discussion? The vote, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Mayor Schilling,
Yes?
Councilmember Beltramini,
Yes.
Fleming,
Yes.
Carla,
Yes.
Sherman,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Slater,
Yes.
Motion passes. And next is I-4, which is a ratification of an IDD district, Industrial Development District, approved on October 19, 2009 at 1400 Rochester.
Madam Mayor,
Councilwoman McGinnis?
I move the resolution as printed.
Support.
Moved by Councilwoman McGinnis, seconded by Councilwoman Kerwin, that we approve the establishment of the IDD district and plant rehabilitation district for 1400 Rochester Road. Discussion? The vote, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Councilmember Beltramini,
Yes.
Fleming,
Yes.
Carla,
No.
Kerwin,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Slater,
Yes.
Mayor Schilling,
Yes. Motion passes. Next, we go to the consent agenda. Council members, are there any items that you wish to have exempted at this time on the consent agenda? Seeing none, could we have a resolution to approve all of the consent agenda items?
So moved. Support.
Moved by Councilwoman Beltramini and seconded by Councilwoman Kerwin, that we approve with this vote all of the consent agenda items at this time. Discussion? The vote, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Councilmember Fleming,
Yes.
Carla,
Yes.
Kerwin,
Yes.
McGinnis,
Yes.
Slater,
Yes.
Mayor Schilling,
Yes.
Councilmember Beltramini,
Yes.
Motion passes. I need to ask at this time, Mr. Zerlag, do we need to have a meeting on the 16th of August? Because if we're not, then this would be the time at this place in the meeting, I think, that we would have to have a resolution to cancel.
City staff is available to meet anytime City Council requires. Having said that, there are no public hearings scheduled for next Monday, and if there is a meeting next Monday, what I do, just mechanically let you know, is that there's a staff meeting tomorrow on Tuesday, and I say, okay, what do you have for me that's due at 12 o'clock today? And then things come in, you know, our deadline's Tuesday, 12 o'clock, we review it Wednesday, it goes out Thursday. So it's up to you. If you want to meet, we'll meet, but there's nothing pressing to meet next Monday.
And some of the study items that we're going to be exploring, I understand that we need a little bit more time on those for some information.
That's correct.
Okay.
And what I can do is, I met with some staff members and scratched out a tentative schedule for items that we want to discuss with council. I'll share that with the governing body so that you get a sense of when we'd like to discuss some things, and then you can certainly comment thereon. The most important issue from my perspective is the balance of our restructuring. And I've been in contact now several times with the International City Management Association. They're going to be providing us with a proposal next week or the week after, and it's probably going to take them through the end of the year, possibly January, before they come back with all the recommendations.
Okay. Mrs. Bartholomew, do we need to suspend the rules here? Okay. Could we have a resolution to suspend the rules then?
Madam Mayor,
Councilwoman Kerwin,
I do move that we suspend the rules.
do we have a second?
Second.
Moved by Councilwoman Kerwin, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Fleming, that City Council suspends the rules at this time. Discussion? The vote, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Councilman Harder?
Yes.
Kerwin?
Yes.
McGinnis?
Yes.
Slater?
Yes.
Mayor Schilling?
Yes?
Councilman Beltrame?
No.
Fleming?
Yes.
Motion passes. Could we have a resolution then to cancel the August 16th meeting?
Madam Mayor,
Councilwoman Beltrame?
before that motion is made, we added these meetings because we have much on our plate. Either we're going to meet or we're not. If we are not diligent in doing our job, we cannot expect our staff to do likewise. Staff doesn't have to prepare what we want in a code of conduct, and that's hanging over our heads. It's been on the agenda for 2 years. It's never been done. Now, you can cancel a meeting or we can talk about it.
I think that the idea when we had, we added meetings was that we had regular agenda items and study items that we were going to deal with. And yes, I do know that that is one of the areas that we said we were going to explore.
Mayor,
Councilman Slater?
I agree with Councilwoman Beltramini. I'm ready to meet and move forward and do some work, so I agreed to suspend the rules, but I would like to meet.
The 16th? I know we really should have a resolution on the floor before we have a discussion of the item by our rules, but sometimes we have done a discussion. Mrs. Bartholomew, should we have a resolution on the floor before we have a discussion?
That is most correct, but it's not always the practice.
Okay. Yes, Mrs. Blum?
Mayor, as soon as you're ready for discussion, I just wanted to let you know, this was a meeting that was added, and I had already been previously committed out of town that day. I will not be there. I'm happy to get the information later on, but in the past, if there's anything that you expect of me for the Code of Conduct discussion, I will not be there on that evening.
Okay. Thank you. Folks, really, but for procedure, we should have a motion on the floor, even if the motion does get defeated. Does someone want to move the resolution to cancel the meeting of the 16th? And then you can see how the discussion and the vote goes. Councilman McGinnis?
I'll move the resolution to cancel the meeting on Monday, the 16th, for purposes of discussion.
Moved by Councilwoman McGinnis. Do we have a second? I'll second it to get it on the floor. The vote, Mrs. discussion? The vote on canceling the meeting for, anyone else want to discuss this at this point? Yes, I thought it was.
Yeah,
Mayor Pro Tem Fleming?
If we move this for discussion, we need to discuss it and not vote on it that quickly, I think. And I'm available for the meeting if we have an agenda for the meeting. Maybe there are other things other than that we could talk about as well, because I know we've got a full plate. I didn't come prepared with a list of things for the council to discuss on the 16th, but maybe other council members have things that they would like to discuss on the 16th, and I'd certainly be available.
Yes, and those would have to be part of our agenda.
Yes.
For the meeting. So.
Maybe we can
Further
do that
discussion
tonight.
on the resolution to cancel. This is the time where we should indicate if we feel that we should meet on the 16th or not. I do know we could meet at that time. There may be some people that could not be there at that time, so we could begin our discussion on that.
Madam Mayor?
Councilwoman Kerwin?
Well, as Councilmember Beltramini said, I don't know how essential it would be to have a number of staff to talk about a council code of conduct. However, it might be a good time to handle council code of conduct in addition to looking at council goals and so on. I know that at one time the city manager was going to look into a facilitator for that kind of a session. It would be helpful to have one. If not, we can look at the goals that currently exist and work on them. But we have not yet actually had that opportunity to talk about a vision for the city of the future and talk about specific council goals, city goals in our code of conduct. It seems like that combined effort would make a full meeting just on its own.
The problem with having that added at this time, I don't know that we could get a facilitator. Remember we wanted to have a facilitator here for that? I'm just bringing that up as a discussion. Not necessarily do we have to have one. Further discussion on the item?
Madam Mayor.
Yes, Councilwoman McGinnis?
I guess I'm just curious if we can ask staff. I know that since I've been on council, we've seen an email about the code of conduct. I know it's been discussed before. Are we going to be able to have information provided to us so that we can discuss it? And same with goals and objectives. Obviously, that's something that I had said earlier that I was most impressing upon the importance of doing that in a timely fashion. But at the same time, I don't want to come here if we're not fully prepared. So I think that we need to have some indication if this is something that we can pull together, even if it's just for discussion purposes, that we'll have all that information in front of us. I think goals and objectives seems like it might be a lofty task, and I would just prefer to have everyone prepared and have the appropriate information before we schedule a meeting and don't get anything
When
accomplished.
we got the big blue notebook about boards and committees, included in there were some things about code of conduct that other groups had in practice. And as far as the other information on goals, I don't think that we've received anything recent. We had our goals that we had, those 3. We used to have 5, and then we put them down to 3 because we combined some together. But we talked about the fact that perhaps some of them should be changed. So, you know, and that's really our area that we discuss rather than having it come from staff. As far as having Mrs. Bloom present, I think that she's given us the written data on that from the other organizations. Didn't you, Mrs. Bloom? Isn't that, am I recollecting correctly?
Mayor, I have given you some information, some historical information from the past, and then also some samples of other communities and what they have for their codes of conduct. It is by no means exhaustive, and it's just kind of sampling, and I'm waiting for further direction from council.
Okay. All right. Okay, anybody else want to discuss about canceling the 16th? Sounds like from the yes, Mr. Zerle?
In response to Councilwoman McGinnis, I am meeting Barry Depp next week sometime. I don't have a date on my calendar, but I still am pursuing facilitator for the goals and objectives component.
Well, next week would be after the 16th.
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Madam Mayor?
Yes. Mayor Pro Tem Fleming?
Well, it sounds like we're willing to meet, but it doesn't seem feasible if we're not going to really be prepared and have an agenda. So I think that it's prudent to cancel the meeting if we're not going to have, you know, complete agenda and really have time to review what we're going to be meeting about. So.
We could do just the code of conduct and leave the goal section for another time and at least get that portion done, because that's something we've said we wanted to explore. I didn't know what people's plans were when we added the extra meeting time. I realized that it's summertime and there are people that do leave town for vacations, etc. So I was just kind of leaving it open if we needed to meet or if we didn't need to meet. So I'm acceptable to do it either way.
Me too, and if I may.
Yes, Mayor Pro Tem
Unfortunately
Fleming?
for me, I am available on the 16th. The following meeting, I'm not available. So I guess I'd like to meet whenever we can here, but I know that I'm at this point, I'm scheduled to be out of town on August the 23rd. But, I had scheduled around August the 16th to be here, but that's just one person.
Okay. Madam Mayor,
Yes, Councilwoman Kerwin?
unless there's someone else who wants to speak.
Anyone else want to speak on it before I call on Councilwoman Kerwin again? Councilwoman Kerwin?
We've had a couple, these past two meetings have been rather light in the agenda. And I think it was an expectation that the code of conduct would have been somehow added on to one of these. And I guess my suggestion would be, Mayor, with the city manager, that when you're looking at that, we know that we have all of those things that we had ticked off. It would be very helpful to have it more on this, and then we'd be moving along on our debt list. So I will be voting in support.
Of canceling the meeting?
No, I'll be voting in support of, well, I'll vote no.
Okay.
I'll vote no on
Of
this.
having the meeting,
Of
okay.
having
Further discussion?
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
Can you just
Mayor Pro Tem
clarify?
Fleming?
For me, we've talked a lot. Can you clarify what we're voting on?
Oh, I can, yes.
Thank you.
We're on voting, the motion was made by Councilman McGinnis and seconded myself to get it on the table for discussion, to cancel the August 16th meeting, so that we could have a discussion to determine whether we want to cancel it or not. If we vote no on the item, it means we continue to keep the August 16th meeting on the agenda. If we vote, majority votes yes, then we cancel the meeting and then have it on the 23rd.
That's what it's.
Okay?
Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
the vote, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Councilwoman Kerwin?
Yes. Wait a minute, no. I apologize.
You're right.
I apologize. It's no.
McGinnis?
No.
Slater?
No.
Mayor Shaw?
No.
Councilman Beltrame?
No.
Fleming?
No.
Howard?
No.
Motion fails. Therefore, we will have our meeting on the 16th and talk about code of conduct.
Right.
And if there's some other one of our study items that we feel we should slot in there that we have the information on between now and then, we can add that to the agenda too. Okay? And if there are any agenda items that staff has that they want to bring forward, since it is a regular meeting, we can do that and then go to the others. Okay.
Do you want me to resubmit the code of conduct information that you had a while back?
We have it in hard copy in that blue notebook. If everybody still has their blue notebook, it was in there.
We
Was
can-
there more information?
Electronically, we'll resubmit it.
Okay. All right. Then we're on to council referrals, and we have an item L1, a proposed charter amendment, operation of city-owned library submitted by Councilmember Howerlack.
Mayor?
Councilman Howerlack?
I guess consistent with the last discussion, we'll see if there's any support to get it on the table. So what I'll do at this point is move the resolution as printed on the agenda, and that would be resolved that the Troy City Council hereby refers to the Charter Revision Committee a proposal to amend the Troy City, or the city charter, to mandate a city-owned and operated library, and be it further resolved that the Troy City Council hereby directs the Charter Revision Committee to discuss the proposal, draft proposed ballot language, and make a recommendation to the City Council no later than October 9th, 2010.
Support for discussion.
Moved by Councilman Howerlack, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Fleming, that we approve the resolution referring. Discussion.
Mayor?
Councilman Howerlack.
Just to speak to my resolution, my concern is that the direction that we appear to be taking based on our 5-year budget that was adopted by the majority of council earlier this year envisions closing the library next year. And additionally, as a result of that, it would appear that a number of proposals have been put forward to this city government, as we see on item, I think, N9, which there's a communication about. And based on the direction that's going it doesn't lead me to feel very confident about what's going to happen next year, because I believe that the city-owned and operated library is essential to this city. I believe this is a proper direction to go. Now, if the council at large believes that a tax increase is warranted prior to next year, then that's another issue entirely. But this speaks to the concept of whether or not this city should have a library. I think the resolution speaks to itself, but I just want to explain why I brought it forward. The other reason for the date is because I wanted to make sure it didn't get lost.
Further discussion of the item?
Mayor,
Councilman Slater?
I've only had a couple days to look at this, and I wasn't quite sure what the reason was before tonight. It seems like there are some legal questions potentially, and I don't think I would be prepared to move on this tonight because of those reasons. And I don't want to put the legal department on the spot tonight, but I would like to get some documentation from the legal department on the legality of this resolution and the proposed November ballot languages. I read in the paper today that the citizens of Troy are becoming confused by what's happening in this city because of what some people are doing, and it's very disturbing for me that there are some things going on that bewilder me, and I would like to have the legal department respond to some of this for me.
At some point, I expect
At some point, not.
You want a written report rather than.
I would like a written report, and I would like it to encompass the 4 ballot questions. What's going on with that? What's the potential down the road? To me, it looks like there's no way that can pass anymore by what's being done. If you can vote no on every single item, there's no way in the world that library proposal can pass. At least that's my thinking. So this kind of came very quickly on me. I'm not prepared tonight to vote on this. And if I could get some legal
Right,
opinion.
and my concern with it kind of goes along with that, and that is that if this resolution passes and then we have a charter amendment to mandate a city-owned and operated library, and the item that is going to go on the November ballot, if one of those passes for an independent library, then we'd end up having 2 libraries. We'd have a city-owned one and we'd have the independent one. That is very confusing to people. The second thing is that by resolution, a majority of council voted because of the monies with the budget, we made the decision to go forward with this year's budget and a 3-year budget, which took away the funding for a city-owned library after next July. And that resolution still stands. The funding for a city-owned and operated library has to be determined, and where that money would come from with other things that, as far as finances of the numbers, actually they're coming in lower. Every time we look at the numbers, they come in lower. So I'm not sure that even if a resolution like this passes, that it would be prudent. So I can't see why we would send it to the Charter Revision Committee to work on it at this point. Further comments on the item?
Madam Mayor?
Mayor Pro Tem Fleming?
Whether this resolution passes or not, it doesn't sound like it will. I just believe we all agree that this budget is a rolling budget. You know, we're evaluating it very frequently. And I think this council owes it to the citizens to do our best to put forward a budget that does have a library, albeit maybe reduced, downsized from what we have now. I think we got direction from the state librarian to put forth a budget before they would consider if we could operate with reduced hours and still get the funding and the benefits of being a state library, that we needed to put forth a budget. It may be half what budget we had previously, but I think that's what our task is. And I don't think it's this council's task to stand here and support what the library committee is doing, putting a ballot language on the ballot. That's their prerogative. That's not a direction from council. And I don't think people should be led to believe that this is a city council decision. This is a decision by a library committee. I think this council's decision is how do we put forward a budget that does support a library, whether this charter revision resolution passes or not. Because I just think we owe it to ourselves to do our due diligence. We're going through the process, we're making changes, we're downsizing, so forth. The question still remains, what can we set aside as we move forward for a budget for the library? And I don't think that number is 0. There is a number. How large it can be is yet to be determined. But we need to task ourselves to put forward a budget for the library, take that to the state, and either get approval or not that they will continue with the support for a downsized library with reduced hours.
Further discussion of the motion?
Madam Mayor,
Councilwoman Beltramini?
being the other person that voted against the budget as proposed, the fact of the matter is, Wade, you'd love a budget with a library. I would too. But management and the majority of this council have made the decision that for the foreseeable future, there is no city funding for a library. Therefore, for those citizens who want a library, they need to find external funding somewhere. Public Act 164 allows that. So the Friends of the Library and their cohorts put a ballot proposal to the city clerk. Those petitions were ratified. 3 others came after that. And when you figure out what it would cost an average Troy household, we're back to arguing over $2. And I would like to think that those 3 other groups that put forward that proposal really care about those $2 or $3 and did not present an initiatory petition, which is one of the most democratic things we have in this system, to try and obfuscate an issue. That is what is annoying me, and I think worrying Councilman Hawrylak here as well. But that is the people's right. And this council has decided that for the next 3 years, minimally, there is no funding for that library. So yes, it's going to lock its doors on the 30th of June in 2011, but rest assured, lending privileges will end before that, and the collection will shorten before that, because the staff to box it up and or move it is off the payroll at 5 o'clock on the 30th of June. So to pass this, quite honestly, I think further obfuscates the issue and postpones it and confuses it. I understand the frustration. I share it. But this doesn't fix it.
Further discussion of the item?
Mayor?
Councilman Hawrylak?
You know, I think it's important for us to just look at the bigger picture. And, you know, if we, I would be surprised if it's not unanimous that we believe among the 7 of us here that we should operate, that a city should, one of its functions should be a library. And so the key here for us is to figure out how we can do that. And one of the ways is to have a library district. Let's say, for example, that fails. Then where are we? Then we're 3 or 4 months down the road, and we have to we have timelines that we need to work within as well. And so if there's an interest on council here, I do think that we have a responsibility to our constituents to solve that problem. And if the direction is a library district and that's the way the residents want it, fine. But if that doesn't work, then we need to have another option. And that may include something anywhere between the tax where we are now and the 1.9 increase that failed. But the problem with saying that residents voted against the library in February is that well, some people have said that, but the point is that what they voted against was a 1.9 mil tax increase. They didn't vote against, take your pick of things that we have to cut. So this simply puts it into their, the voters, that is, the decision making, into their hands and say, literally asking them, and we could even theoretically do it as an advisory question, but if there is a desire among the electorate to have a city-operated library, then it mandates that we solve that problem before we close it, because the actual differential, which is the cost between what we're paying now to operate the library and what will cost us to maintain the building in safe condition, is the actual incremental cost, because we know that when a library is closed, that we as a city need to maintain it in a sound condition unless we decide to tear it down. So that there is a cost that management had provided us. And so that's the difference between that and what we're paying now is the actual real cost to keep the library open, and that's certainly a lot less than 1.9 mils. And it's clearly not feasible to get this on in November 2010 election. That wasn't the point. The point was to keep the discussion moving so that we can find a way to have a library in the city next year.
Further discussion of the resolution that's before us?
Madam Mayor.
Councilwoman Kerwin?
Well, there was always when I hear this talk about, gee, there must be a way and so on, there's always been a way. We have always, as a council, had the option of putting it on the ballot with a dedicated millage. We have always, when I hear my colleagues talk about, well, there should be a way to come up with, we have looked at sustainability. There is no sustainable revenue unless it comes from the voters. But always this council had that prerogative of putting before the people. Whether this was sent to the Charter Revision Committee or not, we always as a body could have placed that issue on the ballot. We simply chose not to. So when I hear about finding the money, if that's the will of that side of the table, then bring it forward. That's the funding you need. Furthermore, we have never heard about the process on at what time and the packing of boxes and all of that process. I've never heard that before, not presented to this council. So if we all want to share that vision, that might be an important report to have in writing and otherwise. Otherwise, I think it just creates more and more visible chaos about an inevitable. A library. The library itself needs a structure. A dedicated group of individuals said, we'll take it on, and we'll take it to the people and champion a structure. Other people have since, in fact, 2 of the names known for fighting taxes have their names on petition. One doesn't make sense. It's 3 years and the years don't match. So I do think that this seems to be an attempt to create confusion on the ballot in what otherwise would have been a democratic yes or no question, and now will be a series of questions. But if it is the desire of this council to support, as it says here, mandate a city-owned and operated library, it will take resources, and we may go forward with a dedicated millage ourselves.
Further discussion of the motion as it appears before us?
Madam Mayor.
Councilwoman McGinnis?
You know, I tend to agree with Councilwoman Kerwin, and in listening to Councilwoman Beltramini speak, I wish I could be as optimistic, thinking that each one of these have come forward completely altruistically, and that they just don't happen to match up number-wise. Obviously, I think the goal would have been to have everyone on board and presented that question to the people to make that decision, hopefully more informed than they had been when we started this process. Additionally, I think we have to keep in mind the budget was approved. It was approved by a majority of council that participated very actively in discussions and really talked about the numbers that we were looking at. But we've also discussed how we're going to be revisiting this quarterly. We haven't even reached the quarter mark yet. Right. We've made some huge decisions in the last couple of months in terms of changing the way that the departments are structured, and those had big ticket price tags attached to them as well. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't continue to look for a way. I think that we're going to be doing that throughout the year when we address each of these things that are still left on our plate. But I'm hesitant to add language that's going to bind us to do something that I think all 7 of us very rationally looked at and figured out for one way or another we weren't going to be able to do that in the way that this is demanding that we would do. So I just think it may be premature in terms of putting that out there, not knowing what's going to be happening with the election, that's not knowing what's going to be happening with the first budget review here coming up quarterly.
Mayor?
Councilman Slater?
If I could just to reiterate, I don't know if this gets put on the ballot, what legal ramifications there are to this city. And to me, that's an important issue. If this passes and one of the other ballot questions passes, or all 5 of them pass, what happens? To me, we're back muddying the waters again. I think the city actually had come to the conclusion that reality was setting in, and that the only way to save the library, the Friends of the Library came up with a good idea. And here we are back again, muddying the waters, creating distrust, creating havoc amongst the voters. They're not going to know what to do again. And I think once again somebody has accomplished their mission. And it's not fair. It's not fair. I know there are 4 people sitting at this table here that supported a millage to keep the library. I think 5. And here we are again trying to discredit some people here on council that we're not supporting the library, which is completely false. There are 5 of us, I believe, that publicly said that we want to have a millage to keep the library and keep other amenities and work to try and downsize. And once again, we have people trying to muddy the waters. It's very disturbing. I'm not saying that I don't agree with Councilman Hawryluk's resolution. I might. But I would like some time to think about it. I would like to know what the law department has to say about this, because I think it puts us in a terrible position. I'm not a lawyer, but I think it could put us in a terrible position that we pass this and then we potentially could pass 4 other ballot questions. So I would like to postpone this and get something from the law department. And I don't want to put Lori on the spot tonight. I would like to know what's going on legally with these ballot questions, and if this goes on there, what would happen legally to the city? What would we be binded to?
Mayor.
Yes, Mrs. Blum?
I'm not going to be able to give you a whole answer, and I do appreciate the opportunity to do some research on it, because the 4 petitions is something that is unique. We've never seen that before. But I will tell you that this cannot make the same November ballot. So the other petitions, they are independent. City Council does not have anything to say about those, and as long as the city clerk has certified that they have the minimum number of signatures, which I believe that she has, it's the 50 signatures, they will be presented and they will appear on the ballot, the 4 of those. As far as what happens if all 4 of them were to pass, I don't think that there is going to be an answer that we're going to find, because this is a very unique situation. I will do my best to find something, but I don't think that there's anything out there. I also want to point out as well that even if this does pass, and even if the voters do approve this, they still will have the opportunity to get the 50 signatures and petition for a millage for an independent library under the 1877 law. So you can have this, and you can still have the opportunity to go forward under the 1877 law. So hopefully that provides a little bit of some information to you. I will certainly do some research about what happens if all 4 of them were to pass, but I suspect that there is not going to be an answer to that question.
I'd like to speak to the matter of support of the Troy Public Library. Personally, I've always been a supporter of the library, and I felt that the best way to save the library was to pass the general operating millage in February and work to that end. That did not happen, so therefore we were left with the option which we fully put out to people about what would happen if it did not pass. I think that mandating a city-owned and operated library by a charter, and sending it to the Charter Revision Committee and then putting it on the ballot would be a disservice to the citizens of Troy, just as the state has mandated certain things and then expecting the local governments to pay for certain things. They've mandated and they haven't come forward with the funding for it. And we've complained, other cities have complained, but it still happens. So I object strenuously to having the word mandate in there in any form. Secondly, I'm very concerned about the fact that we could have an independent library board and then be required to have a city-owned and operated library. And I don't think that this community is going to support having 2 separate libraries. I had a hard enough time, having one. Also, I want it very clear to members of the public that no members of this city council that I know of were involved with bringing forward the proposal that the Friends of the Troy Public Library brought forward, the committee that is Save the Citizens Save the Troy Public Library group. That was done independently because they felt that they needed to do that when to preserve the library. I do not know the motives behind the other 3 proposals, but the wording and the language, except for the numbers, are exactly the same as what was put forward, what was it, 2 weeks previously, that the first ballot proposals came forward with petitions. I'm suspicious of those 3 simply because I think it's an attempt to confuse the voters, and I think it's very unfortunate that that occurred. Certainly, as mayor, I want to see our city have a library. However, I'm realistic enough to realize that if the monies are not there, there are certain things that we need to do that take precedent over other things. And that's why certain decisions were made to go ahead with option 1. that was very difficult for all of us. And I think that that should be also very clear to people. But I think that by having this go to the Charter Revision Committee, it just confuses people even more about what could happen instead of making it clear and concise. Further discussion of the motion?
Mayor,
Councilman Howard?
I'll tell you, I have a lot more faith in the voters than a lot of people at this table, because the issue of confusing people, I don't think is the case, because this proposal is for this to go in the November 2011 ballot, and I would imagine that if there were a library district operating within this city, there wouldn't be support to have a second library. I think that would be kind of silly. I will also add that I think it's also kind of silly that you can have a brand new government in the form of a library district established, or put on the ballot, I should say, by however many number of individuals or groups petitions to get it on the ballot with 50 signatures. This is 2010, and we live in a city of 80,000 people, and we could have an infinite number. Well, I suppose there's an N number because of the timelines to get on the ballot, but you could have you already have a pile of things that'll be on the ballot for them. And I think it speaks to the fact that this law needs to be changed, because there's almost no barrier to entry. We have to get more signatures to get on the ballot ourselves. And, and this is a monumental change you're talking about here, because you are setting up a new government. But I guess my resolution, which, by the way, had been in my mind for a number of months, just speaks to my frustration of the approach that we're taking, where you had a large mill levy that was on the February ballot, a special election. It was defeated, and then we as a city council basically just sat on our hands and said that we're going to close this stuff. I would rather, and I understand we're going to have quarterly reviews and so on and so forth, but I would rather us take a more comprehensive view and see what can be done. And it just speaks to my personal desire and intent as a councilman to see the library continue, and I don't want to see it fade from our conversation, because it does rely on having only one option, and that's the option, or 4 options. But for the same thing, that's here on item N9, and that will be on the November ballot. I think prudence dictates that we have continual discussions about other ways to have the same goal achieved, and that's simply all I'm trying to do. And I'm more than happy to postpone it for a little bit. I certainly would be willing to see what the city attorney and city clerk have to say about the procedural elements of this. But my intention is simply to not let this die. I would hope that my colleagues would engage me in that conversation to see what other solutions we have in the future.
Madam Mayor.
Councilwoman Kerwin?
I'm very interested in some of the solutions. I do hear my colleagues talk about their hopes and their desires, but the numbers are the numbers. So if the solutions are there, I mean, I'm so frustrated with Congress and everyone else who speaks in these broad terms, and gee, they wish, woulda, coulda, shoulda. Find it. Look and find it in the budget, or sit down with management, because we have been over and over and over those numbers. And if there's a way, find it and recommend it, rather than simply speaking in terms of, gee, the majority did this and the minority tried so hard. We need an operating budget. There has to be one in place to function as a municipality. That passed, it is the policy of the council. Of the council. And if there are solutions out there and some of these council members have them, then bring them forward, share them with management so we can get some more done.
Further discussion of the resolution that's before us?
Mayor?
Councilman Howard?
The problem is that the majority of council has decided that for whatever reason they want to close the library next year and really aren't interested in solutions. And so I don't know what good those comments that Councilwoman Kerwin just made are going to do us, because we're either going to have a conversation and we're going to have shared goals or we're not. And so I'm just speaking of share goals, because quite frankly, I would be surprised if you could find a majority of us, at least I truly believe that the majority of us would like to see the library open, if not a unanimous agreement. And that's one of the few things that I feel that truly that we all can agree on, is that we would like to see the library. And so I don't think that it needs to end at this. And I don't think that simply slamming our fist down at the table and saying we have a multi-year budget and that's that does us any good. There are a plethora of options that are available. So anyway, as far as this is concerned, we can either postpone it or vote on it.
Mayor,
Councilman Slater?
just to try and wrap this up, I agree with Councilwoman Kerwin. If there was money, I'm willing to sit down and listen to anybody that might have a solution. I haven't not heard one in 6 months, except talking in generalization. But I think this is premature. I'm going to offer to postpone this item, see how things go in November, and look for other options if that gets defeated. So I'm going to offer a resolution to postpone this item till after the November election.
Do we have a second? I'll support it. Get it on the table. The motion is to postpone this item until after the November election. Discussion?
Mayor?
Mayor Pro Tem Fleming?
Yes. Just curious, is it postponing until after the November election to give the city attorney time to come back if she needs that much time? Or the question I have is, do we really need that much time? Is there to eliminate confusion, or both?
And this can't, from what I've been told, it cannot get on the November ballot anyways, so mostly to avoid confusion. I would not like to deal with this until after that election. So that's why I've asked to do that. And to get the city attorney to do some research.
Further discussion
Mayor?
on the postponement? Councilman Howard?
Well, this is just kicking the ball down the road. I don't think it's going to confuse anybody to have us talk about it here. And so my concern is that without a date certain, that we're just pushing this item further down the road. And I suppose this council is good at that, and past councils have been good at it too, but I would be much more comfortable with a date certain. And I would prefer a date that is earlier than 3 months from now.
Further discussion of the motion? The vote on the postponement, Mrs. Bartholomew?
Yes.
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 No.
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 Motion fails. Further discussion on the resolution? No more discussion on the resolution? Okay, the vote on the resolution then, referring this to the Charter Revision Committee?
No.
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 Yes.
Yes.
No.
No.
Motion fails. Next, we go to council comments in this section. Anyone have any council comments? Mayor Pro Tem Fleming?
Yes, Madam Mayor, just a couple. First of all, I'd like to thank personally Councilpersons McGinnis, Slater, Beltramini, and Howard for excusing me from the last meeting. I couldn't be here. That's a common courtesy, and I certainly appreciate that, and I'll return that to you and any person on this council that has to be absent for any reason. I'll certainly give you the common courtesy of excusing you. Secondly, I was not at the meeting when the vote was taken on distracted driver ordinance. Had I been at the meeting, unfortunately I couldn't be here, I would not have supported that ordinance. While I think the intention was good, texting while driving, I think it's gone a little too far. But having said that, I am going to do my best to comply with that ordinance. I would encourage everybody in Troy to comply with that as well, because it is encouraging safe driving, albeit I think maybe we rushed into that a little hastily. But what I would like to see, because I think we make a lot of decisions on data and facts, is I would like to see, and I'd like to ask the city manager through the chief of police just to, we've got a report in this package tonight about statistics and crimes and so forth. If we could possibly keep a record and give the council a quarterly report on how many distracted driving accidents we had that we can attribute to distracted driving. One, that may be difficult to do because you have to observe it or people have to admit. Two, how many warning tickets or stops we have for distracted driving, and how many citations are written for distracted driving. I think we're going to find that there are few, and this is going to be, we make a lot of noise about it, but I don't think we're going to find a lot of people. I think we're going to find most people complying with the law, and I hope that we all do, because it is the law now, whether you like it or not. But I'd just like to know if that is a huge problem, if we're writing a lot of citations, because I know we have a lot going on in Troy. Now, the police are very busy, but how many citations, how many tickets were actually issued? Is that requesting too much? That's
Let me ask Captain Fry, do we keep those records? Do you want to come to the microphone, Keith?
The state form regarding traffic accidents is called a UD-10. There are no provisions on that state form for distracted while driving, even with the new state law. It actually goes to the causes of accidents, which more often than not, those are logged as failure to use due care and caution. But certainly that's something internally that we could probably generate.
I'd just like to comment that I asked for and received an email of these 7 pages of accidents that actually occurred or where people were just doing things for distracted driving. And I don't know if all of council did get it or not. It was supposed to be attached to our item, and some members had it, some didn't. Anyway, I have that, and it does definitely delineate where people have admitted what they were doing and said that they shouldn't have been doing it. And of course, the other thing is with this distracted driving ordinance, warnings are being given now, and it's not until October 1st.
That's correct.
That if they actually see them doing something which causes their driving to be distracted, they have to observe the driving that is not appropriate to actually get the ticket. And so I look forward to when the signs are going to go up, the education's occurred, and people realize that it's for their own safety and the safety of those around them. There were some things happening while people were driving that should definitely not be occurring at all. And I also think that it's going to eventually be nationwide, because I think that a lot of people are realizing what's happening. Technology's fine, but you need to know when to use it and when not to use it. Further council comments?
I haven't really
Pine?
got an answer. I don't want to
Oh,
complicate
okay.
things, but if we could just know, when you're getting information when there's an accident that occurs, I've seen some of that, but can we get at least the tickets that are written for distracted driving?
Certainly.
Get that a quarterly report on that. I want to keep it simple, but I think there are going to be a lot fewer than we would anticipate, but we'll see.
But that report would come out in January then of 2011, right? First quarter, essentially.
That's fine.
Right, Keith?
Not a problem, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Further council comments? Councilwoman McGinnis?
I just have to say something, and it kind of goes along with the discussion that we just ended, but I feel like I will be upset if I don't take an opportunity to say something about the comments that were made that council has just been sitting here on their hands and not doing anything about a budget that we approved and we're just going to be stuck with. Unless I was the only person here for the last 6 months, we've made some really difficult decisions, and they may not have specifically affected the library at the time that we were making them, but I remember sitting here going through the building department, going through golf operations, restructuring engineering department. Pretty much every single month that I've been here, we've done something really big. We've made really difficult decisions, and they were all related to the budget, and they were all related to finding a way that we're going to save money and keep the city moving and keep it operating and provide whatever services we can. So although we haven't found the $4 million to keep the library open, I do resent the fact that someone would say that this council has done nothing to deal with our budget problem. So I just wanted to get that off my chest.
Further discussion? Council comments?
Madam Mayor?
At this point, Councilwoman Beltramini?
I don't know if you all or staff saw from the National League of Cities this week, or maybe it was last, I've been out of town. The Institute for Youth Education and Families has published a new guide on getting authentic engagement from youth. And since we have a youth council, and since we are a city that needs innovative ideas and change, and we want to have engaged citizens, the people who work with the youth council might want to download that. It gives some good ways. It's free. We're a member. It gives some good ways to get kids involved in ways that really matter in their community as issues come forward. So,
and there's an article regarding it in the National Cities Weekly August 2nd issue that is here and references the report. Further council comments? Councilwoman Kerwin?
There were more than 100 people gathered last week at the Troy Community Center to learn about sustainable gardening, rain gardening. Many toured the Alotera facility, and those were conducted tours by some of our familiar friends. Ted Wilson and Tom Stratt were in attendance. It was a really wonderful evening. Everyone there learned so much, and I think it goes into the importance of community members doing what they can to live within a sustainable world. And that's a good goal, and I think that's what we're striving to do right here, and it's something that we can certainly talk about more when we're looking at our goals in the future.
Further discussion?
Mayor?
Further comments? Excuse me. Councilman Howard?
Two things. One, the comment about us sitting on our hands wasn't about the budget. It was about the library, and it's an opinion that I have that we have sat on our hands because I haven't seen any proposals from this council that have been brought to the table that would entail keeping the library open, and they may include a lesser tax increase than 1.9 mils or some other way of doing it. Now, I have a question for staff, and I don't necessarily need an answer immediately, but I had a number of comments about the picnic that was held at Firefighters Park over the weekend by the, I think it was the Troy or the Oakland County Democrats, and not so much about the picnic, but the fact that political lawn signs were placed on city-owned property going into the park. So my question is, if an organization, I'm presuming that they rented the shelter, but I may be wrong, but I would like some clarity about when, if ever, it is appropriate or within the policy of the city to allow for political organizations or individuals, whether that be Republican or Democrat or some other organization, to actually physically place their campaign material on our property.
You know, I wasn't aware of a picnic by the Democratic Club, but I believe Carol Anderson is in the back room, and perhaps she has our rules and regulations that she could articulate. And Carol's not here? Oh, Carol's gone? Well, in that case, I'll have to get back to you. All right?
No, I appreciate that.
Sure.
I just wanted to, it was passed along to me, and I'm passing it along to you,
Okay.
and I appreciate your looking into it.
We'll have that for, I'll have that for the agenda then now next week, report and communication.
I have a council comment, and it's in regard to the election at our polling places. There's a communication in our packet about one of our polling places, which for precinct 4 and 10, which will no longer be in use after the November election due to the behavior and actions of candidates and supporters of candidates or positions at the polling places. It was not in any way due to the workers at the election. And I understand that there's some other polling places too that are very upset with the manner in which people treat each other and in which they follow the rules for that particular facility. I think it's very unfortunate that that should occur, especially since the right to vote is such an important right for people, that they're acting that way. But I think it speaks to the general tone of people in the United States with regard to how they treat each other when they get so worked up over an issue or for a candidate. And I think that it's very unfortunate that that should occur. And I would hope that for the November election that people would, for example, not place their signs in the right-of-way. There were several that I turned in, but the signs were still there. And if they were picked up, they were put back again. That they follow the correct procedures for the polling places so that we can have an election in November that meets the standard that we really should have, not only for Troy, but for other areas too. Any other council comments? We do have some study items, so how about if we take a recess and a 10-minute break
Mayor?
and meet in the other room? Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. Councilman Howard?
I just had one question on one of these reports,
Yes.
and that was that N9. Do we know the status of this, and if not, when will we know? I mean, as far as how many of these things are going to be on the ballot?
Mrs. Bartholomew or Mrs. Bloom?
Both the city attorney and I have been in regular contact with the State Bureau of Elections, Oakland County Elections, and the AG's office, and it appears that all 4 will be on the ballot. The outcome of the results of the polling is not quite known yet. We are doing further research, and we will get back to council as soon as it is known.
Okay. There was one that indicated for a period of 3 years, but the years that they stated on there were not 3 years. So I don't know whether that is going to mean that that's thrown out or whether they're allowed to change that.
That is something that we do not do when we certify. We just certify signatures.
Right.
And as they are written is how they go to the county.
Okay.
If the county, when in talking to the county, they put them on exactly as they're received as well. So it would probably be remedied through the courts.
Okay, thank you. I happened to notice that because you included the exact wording for us. Okay, then we'll be in recess and reconvene in the other room for the study items.